happens, and it goes from one thing to another. So virtually, and you see, when your father was born, I didn't even know that I was going to have a brother. I had no idea, because the Littlewoods didn't think that Grandma Phyllis was good enough, and Mrs. Mellor was as feisty as Auntie Polly. So, and Grandma Phyllis's mother, during the war, was one of these wardens who'd knock on your window and say, "Light showing, light off."
In Bridgemont, was
Yeah.
that? But so Grandma's, they were in Bridgemont as well, were
If
they?
you
Yeah.
threw a stone, you'd hit a melon.
She
So
lived.
who was Auntie Molly? Who was the lady that
Auntie
lived
Molly
just down
was Grandma Phyllis's brother,
Wife.
Bill.
there? Oh, Bill's wife,
and
right? Okay.
Your grandma used to say she always resented him in a way, because he had a grammar school education, and your grandma had been, well, they didn't think that women should, you know, you looked after. So that happened as well, which was very sad, really. But I don't think they ever spoke, Grandma Phyllis and Auntie Polly, ever.
Don't you?
I mean, they were quite...
Auntie Molly. Grandma
Oh, Auntie Molly, who was Molly, they lived at Chapel. And I must tell you, well, Margaret knows Anne, she was Harold's daughter, wasn't she?
Yeah, Graham's father.
So all that half of the village, the rest where Grandad was all filled with Grandma Phyllis's Mellors or Turnocks. And they were all, it was almost like a village with the same family. So here were the Littlewoods, who were usurpers and who really were posh. And we let it be that. It was they were very odd, weren't they? They were. I mean, they were odd. But you see, when your father came along, because when he was young, I never knew him as a baby, ever. But then when the war came, and Grandad he had to fire watch in Manchester. That's what he did at nights. So he was fire watching, and he would say, "I'd like you to go across to sit with Phyllis," because I never called her anything but Phyllis, because she wasn't my mother. So I didn't call her anything, only Phyllis. And Grandad used to call her Filiocus. He never called anybody the proper name. She was always Filiocus. And so he'd say, "Go across," because when I was young, all I remember that your father was having rows of Dinnifords bottles across the mantelpiece.
Great.
And he had that because he was always crying, he was always fractious, he wasn't. But at that time, Grandma was also suffering from thyroid trouble. And then she started her eyelids swelled like little balloons here. And she was lethargic, and she didn't want to do anything. So, in a way, your father will tell you that he was more with me than he was with anybody when he was little.
Right.
But I was the only one.
Did you go across there, or he came here?
Came here. So I can...
After school, he'd come to
He
here?
came. He'd be here
before?
all the time.
Oh, right, before
He'd be
school.
here all weekend. And what would happen, that Grandad worked in Manchester for a long time because men worked on Saturdays, Saturday mornings. They had Saturday afternoon off, but they worked Saturday morning. And because Grandad was head of a department in J&M Phillips, he was responsible for blouses and jumpers. So he was responsible for that. And he talked with a very posh accent and had a cup of tea with his little finger up because he was posh. So, but in that place was this lovely lady called Grace, of which I knew, who was very sweet on Grandad. Of course, his wife had died, my mother had died, and Auntie Polly and all the little ones thought she was the one for Grandad. But of course, Grandad decided who he wanted, and he wanted Filiochus. So he had Filiochus. So for the little ones, this wasn't right. And they must have just, I don't know how they did it really. But Grandma Phyllis had been friendly with Jack Cookson, whose father had a painting and decorating business. And so Grandma Phyllis was very sweet on Jack Cookson and him on her. But then Grandad decided that that's what he wanted, was Filiochus. So that happened. But I mean, they must have been together quite... Well, my mother died when I was 4, just 4, and they married one on my 8th birthday. But why to do that? I mean, why for somebody to say, who are you living with? You are having a pink party today, and you can have all these girls in pink dresses and pink everything. How wonderful.